Algorithms are instructions that a computer can use to do more complex tasks, including analyzing data, making conclusions, and then making decisions based on the results of the data. Data science applies to various areas of life and is the use of many methods, algorithms, and processes to take data and analyze it for new knowledge and insights about the world, resulting in a better ability to solve problems and make decisions. The Association of Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee is against facial recognition for multiple reasons, including its biased results and how easy it is to trick. These issues can make it easy for someone innocent to be arrested for a crime they didn't commit, or for someone guilty to not be recognized by it and get away. The Los Angeles Police Department's use of predictive policing algorithms can be used to make them more effective as long as it does not have biases. These possible biases are important to the LAPD because instead of making them more efficient, it could reduce how effective they're able to stop crimes. In this digital short, I'll be talking about racism within algorithms in data science and how it affects the Association of Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee's assessment on facial recognition technology, and how well the Los Angeles Police Department can do their jobs. Francis Lee and Lotta Bjorklund-Larsen wrote about ways to analyze and understand algorithms to find if they are fair or not, which is important to the Los Angeles Police Department's use of predictive policing. There are many different depths to analyze algorithms, such as barely looking at how it got its results and just what the results are, or looking deeply into how the algorithm works. These have their own advantages and disadvantages because not looking deeply into the algorithms ensure that the results are less likely to be manipulated, but also don't allow you to see why a result was given. Looking very deeply into algorithms allows a much better understanding of how an algorithm works and makes decisions to ensure it has fair results, but also makes it easier for people to know how to manipulate the algorithm in their favor, which results in it being unfair again. These ways to analyze algorithms are useful for the Los Angeles Police Department because they need to know if the algorithm they use for predictive policing is fair. The LAPD wants to use predictive algorithms because it would help them to be more effective and be where they are needed more often. They are worried about the algorithm being fair though, because if it is not fair, then it could harm the people they are trying to protect. Without knowing how to analyze the algorithm that they use, the LAPD would just have to trust that the results are fair and not know what contributes to the results. Jean E. Fontaine wrote about the biases of algorithms and ways to reduce their bias. This is important to the Association of Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee's argument against facial recognition. Racism is a big problem in algorithms because people don't expect it from a machine and instead think that the results are always fair due to there being no human emotions and feelings influencing the results. This is incorrect and can lead to even more biased results since people don't try to fix the way algorithms are trained that result in them being unfair. A lot of bias in algorithms can be reduced by having oversight in how algorithms are being trained and programmed, and having regulations in the ways algorithms can be used or made. Doing this would allow for others who have an outside perspective to the way the algorithms are being made to ensure fairness in the end result of the algorithm. Algorithms are also able to learn biases from the sample group that they are taught on by having some people be underrepresented. This is important to the ACM committee's argument because facial recognition was trained on mostly white male faces and it has trouble correctly recognizing faces different from what it was trained on. The ACM committee wants facial recognition to have more oversight because of the negative impact it can have on people when it is wrong. The ACM committee wants facial recognition not to be used until it has been proven that it is fair and that it has regulations and oversight to ensure it stays fair. Pascal D. Koenig and Georg Weisenberger wrote about how algorithms and artificial intelligence can affect politics, which can affect the Association of Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee trying to get facial recognition more regulated. Algorithms are able to take a lot of information and present it in a simple way quickly to allow people to answer questions and navigate a lot of information in much less time. Doing this allows people to be better informed when making decisions that can affect many people and ensuring that their political choice is not based on a lack of information. Having access to more easily understood information helps reduce the chance that they will vote in a way that negatively affects them and others based on false information or not understanding what they found. Algorithms can also make it so groups are able to tailor their message to more easily convince people to think their way even when it results in a negative outcome. Algorithms can also be programmed with biases, which could make their information bad and discriminate against groups. Using artificial intelligence would allow people to understand why the ACM committee is against facial recognition and their arguments for why it needs to be regulated. The ACM committee would also be able to tailor their message to make it more convincing and present their reasoning better. Since people are able to use artificial intelligence to simplify and understand a lot of information, the ACM committee would be able to fully explain why they think that facial recognition needs to not be used till it is fair and will stay fair. Brantingham et al. Wrote about predictive policing in Los Angeles and if the algorithm was biased against minority groups, which is something that the Los Angeles Police Department needs to know. Predictive policing is based on data of crimes committed, but if that data is biased, it is possible for the algorithm to give bad information that can target and impact minorities. There is a lot of evidence that bias has an effect on who is stopped, searched, and detained, which can affect predictive policing by making the data it has biased. It is also possible that there would be racial bias in predictive policing algorithms that are based on specific places, due to this biased policing happening more in areas with high minority populations. Predictive policing is also able to reinforce discrimination that happens in these areas.
The programs, for instance, often flag low-income communities or minority neighborhoods as alleged hotspots, prompting the police to patrol those areas more than others. This in turn generates even more data and sets off a vicious circle of discrimination, flagging these areas over and over again. Similarly, the programs tend to single out low-income people and minorities as potential offenders.
The Los Angeles Police Department wants to know if their use of predictive policing is fair, because if it is biased, then they would have to stop using it and try to get it fixed. They want to use predictive policing to be more effective, but they don't want to be using biased information for where they're needed, because then they might not be able to stop actual crimes that are happening. If the LAPD doesn't know that the algorithm is biased, then it's possible that they would be more biased against people they suspect are committing a crime in areas that algorithms say have a high crime rate. The Association of Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee thinks that facial recognition technology has many problems, especially when used by groups like the Los Angeles Police Department. Facial recognition technology creates face prints by using key points of faces, which when combined can be run through different databases to find matches. The better the quality of images it has to work with, the more likely it is to successfully find a match, but it can also be used to get some insight into emotions with a high error rate. Unfortunately, this technology does not currently have the capacity to make unique face prints for individuals, which causes a lot of system errors and makes it different from using fingerprints and iris scans to match with, since these are unique. These issues are a big problem when using facial recognition in the justice system, because a false positive could put an innocent person in jail, while a false negative could let a criminal go free. This means that the LAPD would need to make sure that they had other ways to verify if the facial recognition was correct, or use the results as a starting point and not the only piece of evidence to arrest someone off of. The use of facial recognition by the LAPD and other police departments is something that the ACM committee thinks we need to be careful of because of how often the results are wrong. The Association of Computing Machinery U.S. Technology Policy Committee is against facial recognition use in areas like Los Angeles, where there is a very diverse population. Since facial recognition technology was mostly trained on white male faces, it has more trouble correctly identifying people with darker skin and female faces.
At the time of Robert's arrest 3 years ago, studies showed that the technology was between 10 and 100 times more likely to misidentify black people than white people. This is because the technology is trained on predominantly white datasets.
Even though it has been years since facial recognition technology was created, it still has problems with bias, which is why the ACM committee thinks that this technology should not be used where it could affect human rights. The ACM committee thinks the use of facial recognition technology could cause a lot of issues due to the biases it has. The ACM committee also thinks that facial recognition has the potential to violate privacy and civil liberties and called for a suspension of its use in 2020. Since Los Angeles has such a diverse population, it is more likely that a random selection of people could be misidentified due to facial recognition errors than less diverse areas. The ACM committee thinks that facial recognition should not be used, since its results are many times more likely to misidentify a non-white face than a white face, and using it in an area with diverse population would cause trouble for a lot of people. Having someone misidentified by facial recognition could cause someone to be arrested for a crime they didn't commit and waste the time and resources of government agencies like the police. The Los Angeles Police Department wants to use predictive policing, but they need to be careful of the potential to be biased that it has. Due to biased policing, the data used for predictive policing is also biased, which can cause the algorithms to have biased results.
The data represents the race perceived by officers and not the race people may identify with because that's what drives bias. The report found police reported Hispanic or Latino people made up about 43% of traffic stops, above their 32% share of California's population.
These results can reinforce the biases, since it would be saying that these areas that are usually places with high minority or poorer populations have a lot of crime, which is based on the already biased data that was provided. If someone that the police are generally biased against are seen in areas that the algorithm says are high crime areas, then it's more likely that the police are going to be biased against them, even if they're not doing anything illegal. The majority of the areas that the algorithm would send the police to are based on crimes that the public reports, which is also subject to bias. Since so much of the data that the predictive policing algorithms use have the potential to be biased, it means that any result or use of the algorithm is likely to also be biased. This makes it even more important that the LAPD be careful of the use of predictive policing so that they can ensure that the results are not biased. If the algorithm is biased, it has the possibility of making the LAPD less effective, which is something that they also need to watch out for. This is because if the algorithm is saying that an area with a high minority population is a high crime area, when it is not, they might spend more time there and not be able to stop crimes that are actually happening elsewhere. The LAPD wants to use predictive policing since it could tell them what areas are more likely to have crimes being committed, so they can stop them and catch criminals rather than missing them. The Los Angeles Police Department did not have increased arrests when using predictive policing, but they think it could be used to make them more efficient. By using predictive policing, the LAPD are able to find areas that are supposed to have high crime levels, which they're able to patrol and stop more crimes that are happening. The algorithm was able to correctly identify high crime areas because the areas that the police were sent to based on its results had higher arrests than areas that were not identified as high crime, but did not result in more arrests than days that the algorithm was not used. Total arrests were not increased by using predictive policing, but it is able to increase the effectiveness of the police by telling them where they need to patrol more. By patrolling high crime areas, the amount of crime decreases and stays lower for a bit after the police leave, since criminals do not want to commit crimes while the police are near. If the LAPD uses predictive policing to find high crime areas to patrol more often, they would be able to better dissuade criminals from committing crimes there, which would make them more effective by reducing crime without the LAPD having to use resources to find and chase criminals. The Los Angeles Police Department will be able to use predictive policing algorithms to better identify high crime areas, to plan patrols, to go through these areas more in an attempt to keep crime lowered.
By identifying the high-risk areas and times, police can strategically deploy resources such as patrols and surveillance to prevent crimes before they happen. Proactive policing can potentially lead to a decrease in crime rates in targeted areas. By anticipating potential crime hotspots, police can respond more quickly and effectively to incidents.
Algorithms and data science can be useful to analyze information, but we need to ensure that they are not biased, even accidentally. As we learn more about algorithms and data science, we are finding out how they can become biased and in what ways we can reduce and eliminate these biases. Even though many believe that algorithms and analyzing data is completely fair, that is just not true. Algorithms very easily can be programmed with biases, and data can be unknowingly biased or misinterpreted in a way that is biased. The ACM committee worries about the biases that are in facial recognition and how its issues can cause problems for many. They want it to not be used, and if it is used, to have regulations, restrictions, and oversight to ensure that it is fair and people are not harmed by it. The LAPD wants to use predictive policing algorithms to be more efficient with their time and effort, but is aware of the possibility that the results could discriminate against people of color and the poor. They want to use predictive policing algorithms to better map patrols through high crime areas to reduce crimes, but they don't want to waste time by patrolling areas that the algorithm might be biased against, like poor areas or areas with minority populations. Algorithms and data science are useful to analyze the world and find ways to improve our understanding of life, which in turn allows us to make better decisions. We need to be careful that as we use algorithms and data science more, we understand the biases it can have so that we can ensure that the results are fair and do not cause harm to people. We need to always be aware of how dangerous algorithms and data science can be to use, especially when we trust the results without understanding how the result was achieved.